Hello and welcome back to HateWatchers. Today we're going over episode 5 of Ahsoka, Shadow Warrior. Let's get right to it. Spoilers ahead. We begin with Hera looking for Ahsoka, and I guess it's still bring your kid to work day. They hear a noise and investigate, but it's just Hu Yang singing Free Bird in tears as he prepares to jump. Diving into the world between worlds, Anakin and Ahsoka argue over how many people are watching this episode because of him or because of her.
Trust me. You lost.
Anakin, like everyone else, feels like Ahsoka is too boring and wooden now, so he tries to kill her. Back in the real world, the rescue party still hasn't found Sabine or Ahsoka in this 30-foot circle. Jason makes everyone stop because he can hear lightsabers in the waves. And hey, what do you know? Hera has the Force now too, because it's meaningless in Filoni's hands. Back in Filoni's nostalgia-laden fantasy, we see a young Ahsoka with Anakin at the Battle of Ryloth during the Clone Wars. Thankfully, this young Ahsoka is wearing a more modest top than the shirt with the boob window and the tube top Filoni used to put his underage 13-year-old waifu in. They hang out on the battlefield, which is smoky so that Disney doesn't have to shell out for expensive effects. Anakin and Ahsoka have some hollow, empty dialogue that they're hoping you don't hear over the explosions. Jumping to the Siege of Mandalore, we get another distraction from the weak writing. Another cameo from Captain Rex. Ahsoka opens her mouth again, and we learn that her annoying ass is the real reason Anakin fell to the dark side. Filoni's waifu duels evil Anakin and obviously wins. Then she easily makes the decision that Anakin couldn't because she's perfect. Then Ahsoka fades back to the real world where she's rescued after surviving underwater for several hours. Ahsoka wakes up and Hu Yang brings her a cup of whiskey, hoping it will reawaken some of her personality. Jason tells Ahsoka that she farts in her sleep and explains that that's why everyone but the droid was out here. Ahsoka needs only hold half of the destroyed Golden Snitch to hear a reenactment of Sabine being taken, because Ahsoka can do anything. She then sees the space whales fleeing the space Japanese whalers.
Fuck you, whale!
Getting an obvious idea, everyone heads up to fly among the whales, and Ahsoka is now reborn as Ahsoka the White, because Filoni doesn't have any good original ideas of his own. Then she casually walks outside the ship at 30,000 feet up, while the incompetent New Republic shows up to fire Hera, who they consider to have gone AWOL. Next, she communes with one of the whales because if there's a power that exists in Star Wars, Ahsoka has it. The whale begins to yawn like all of us watching at home. They fly into the whale's mouth, and then the whales go into space and fly by the fleet for 6 minutes in slow motion with dramatic music playing, before farting off into hyperspace. And the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode is a great watch or a hate watch. But for us, this episode goes back to the debate watch category like the first 3 episodes. There were some things that were cool to see as a Star Wars fan, and we're well aware that a lot of people are going to be praising this episode, but seeing a de-aged Hayden Christensen in a specific outfit doesn't make this good storytelling, or improve the writing, or make this Ahsoka more likable. So let's get the obvious out of the way. It was great to see Hayden Christensen back as Anakin, and the de-aging seemed to be pretty good this time around. Seeing Hayden blend his Anakin with Matt Lanter's Clone Wars version, seeing him in his Clone Wars outfit charging through the Battle of Ryloth, swinging his saber around better than any Disney character seems to be able to, and of course seeing the flashes of him as Vader. It was all very good and was cool to see as a Star Wars fan, as was seeing Captain Rex in live action. And it's almost enough to distract you from the fact that his scenes with Ahsoka are completely devoid of substance. There's no real meaning to the dialogue they share. There's no discussion of Anakin's fall to the dark side, no discussion on Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order, no mention of Ahsoka meeting Luke, Anakin's son, or anything of importance. Ahsoka almost took a lesson about how she can train Sabine from the conversation, but then she drops it instantly. There's a ton of history between these two characters, and this show chose to revisit none of it. They opted for nostalgic fan service instead of character development. They opted for spectacle over substance. Speaking of character development, we're now 5 episodes into an 8-episode season without any character development, for any character. The barking seals will call Ahsoka's transformation into Gandalf the White, Ahsoka the White, character development, but they're just grasping for straws at this point. Scenes with no message and no meaning, where a shade of a mentor utters a one-word lesson that lead to a character's transformation, does not constitute character development. And worst of all, this show is destroying any goodwill we have for the character the show is named after. We were indifferent to Ahsoka and lukewarm to her at times in the past. But holy crap, this show is making us hate her. She has every force power known in the history of Star Wars, adding psychometry, an ability that was extremely rare previously, and tame beast in this one episode alone because Filoni's waifu insert of a character can do it all and beat anyone and survive anything. It makes the character uninteresting in the same way that Rey from the sequel trilogy was uninteresting. And anyone who's seen Filoni's work with Ahsoka before could see this coming from a mile away. As for the jaunt in the world between worlds that was supposed to ruin Star Wars, it actually didn't bother us too much. And the reason for that is that this is portrayed as pretty much just all in Ahsoka's head. It's just a vision she made up in her deluded brain while she was unconscious, so none of what happened in those scenes actually happened, so it's not canon. Unless people want to argue that she fell off a cliff directly into a portal into the time travel realm, then this has to be just a fever dream of hers that didn't really happen. But, viewing this scene through the lens of knowing what a creepy hack Filoni is, it's clear that he wanted to use the world between worlds, but had to do so in an unclear, obscure fashion so people didn't call out his bullshit. And people with no standards will call these criticisms nitpicking. But nitpicking would be going in depth on how Ahsoka shouldn't survive being underwater for that long. Why the map ball should have a hole in it after getting sabered, instead of being neatly cut down the middle. How Ahsoka can't just walk outside the ship at 33,000 feet. And they miss the point. Good shows and movies don't suffer from nitpicking because the story and characters and the dialogue are good, and they allow you to move past all those things. But in bad or mediocre shows, these dumb little things are amplified because there's not enough good material to focus on and ignore the little things. Beyond all that, this episode was really good at interrupting scenes where something interesting was going on, with slow, terrible scenes that remind you why this show will never be great. This episode took a step back from last week's decent episode, and while some will get distracted by Anakin swinging his saber around, those who see the flaws in this series have another episode riddled with problems and bad writing to point at. The fact that this mediocre episode had a limited release in theaters gives you a really good glimpse into Dave Filoni's hubris. Was seeing Hayden return as Anakin enough to distract you from the fact that his scenes were just nostalgia bait devoid of any meaning? Do you think Dave Filoni sleeps with a life-sized Ahsoka pillow at night? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers to stay caught up on Ahsoka. Thank you for spitting out these member berries with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.